everybody, and welcome back to DreamHack, wherever we are, Sweden.
DreamHack Summer.
DreamHack Summer 2018 here from Jönköping, sponsored, of course, by Corsair. We've finished the first 2 rounds. We're going to get into round number 3. And with me to help me with that is the inimitable Derek Brown.
I am most certainly not imitable.
You are not imitable.
I don't know why one would want
inimitable,
to.
let alone the variations on a theme. Derek, who have we got coming up for this particular Hearthstone match?
I believe going into round 3, we've got a couple of players on 1-1 in Bozzzton and Pokrovac. Both players who have gone with a lineup that's a little bit against the grain from what we're seeing. As I mentioned multiple times so far, the tendency from what we're seeing from most of these players, the tide that's shifting, if you will, is towards slightly more mid-range or aggressive decks. We're seeing a lot more decks like even Shaman, even Warlock, a few odd rogues and odd paladins kind of littered in among there as well. But generally, a little bit more aggressive, bit more consistent. But from both of these players, we see pretty opposite on terms of the control-y, aggro-y spectrum, where we see Shudderwock Shaman from both of these players.
Oh, wow.
Cubelog from both of these players, which is vastly outnumbered by the even Warlock we're seeing from most players. So this could be a bit of a longer one, and it's definitely going to be testing some different aspects of Hearthstone we haven't been seeing too much of so far today.
Yeah, and 2 players that are used to playing DreamHack, so they should be ready for these long, grindy matches. Obviously, having gone through several years of DreamHack, they've had to cope with various metas, some of which leave players really tired at the end of the day. So you've got to be a certain breed of person to be able to play things that are going to go on for a long time.
You do indeed. Even round 2 there, that took a little bit of a while to get through to the end. A lot of players, I believe I saw a fairly disgruntled Tyler sitting there several hours after, not several hours, several quarters of an hour before the first game had finished.
The producer was telling us that one of the matches was 2-1 after 117 minutes.
Oh, goodness.
So I don't know how that one ended or who it was. It's like, what, 2 hours and it's 2-1? What are you playing?
Where's Tunnel Trog to save the day? What's happened to Hearthstone?
I know. Bring back Tunnel Trog immediately. It's exactly what we need. Maybe not.
But getting back to the nitty-gritty of this matchup, both players with 3 decks, I believe, that are the same. It's only the last one on which they differ. We see the Token Druid, which has been, performing relatively well, I think, so far. Not particularly fantastic against the much more common Taunt Druid. They're also both bringing Cubelog and Shudderwock, as I mentioned. The only difference between these 2 players' lineups is that for Bozzzton, he's going with the Taunt Warrior, the very low-curve version of the deck. Obviously not the odd variant, which is kind of fallen by the wayside. To
see which one's actually going to go with it. Let's have a look at the picks and bans for this round. And there you can see the picks are up and the bans are the Warlocks, of which you spoke.
That makes a good bit of sense, as obviously this is the first game of the series, just a slight graphical error there. But this makes a good amount of sense to me, because we obviously have seen fairly recently, Neil, the pretty big nerf to Warlock, Cubelog in general, with the Possessed Lackey and the Dark Pack both being hit pretty hard. But when you actually look at what the game plan is for Cubelog, the decks that suffer, or the decks that it suffers against, are the aggressive decks. Against the more control-y decks, you're still looking to go for all the ridiculous late-game scenarios with Doomguards being resurrected by Gul'dan, the upgraded hero power. It's still just too much for the likes of Control Mage to be fighting back against the majority of the time.
Shudderwock Shaman, in this match, is almost an aggro deck. It's not, but like when there's all this other slow stuff out there, it's actually going to be one of the speedier decks. But sounds like we're getting close to starting here. Both players, I said they played a lot of DreamHacks. Bozzzton, 61%, 36 wins. Pokrovac, 31 wins at 63%. So
very
over that important 60% barrier, which is where you start to look at a player over a decent sum and go, okay, this guy's good.
Yeah. And I'd be very interested to see what decks both of these players choose to start things off with here, because once again, last hero standing, the deck that you start things off with does matter. So let's get into the first game of round 3.
All right, and they're going to start off with that lovely Mage deck.
Yeah, the only unique decks for both of these players in respect to their opponents' lineups. And Mage to get things going here for Pokrovac. The one card he was really looking for in Flamestrike has been found.
The one card he was really looking for.
It was a test, and you were doing something else. That could have been a great bit of banter
I know, but I was busy.
It was a bit of a weird joke there, yeah. Obviously...
Why is it the only card he's looking for, Darek? Explain.
Sorry, obviously, Frostlich Jaina is the only card you're really looking for in this matchup because it completely makes or breaks the late game scenarios. We've seen the Control Mage, generally, they can survive the early game against pretty much every deck, I think, at the moment. Against, there's no deck that's so aggressive that you can't consistently get to Dragon's Fury on 5. Like, Odd Rogue, potentially, if they get a good start, but it's never quite there.
And this is why this deck gets ridiculed quite a bit by the top players, because it's about a 50% chance of drawing that Jaina by turn 9. If you mulligan full for it and you're on the coin, I think it's 52%. So
okay.
If you're first to play, I don't know the numbers, but it's going to be less than 52% because there's fewer cards. So you're basically a coin flip to have it or not on curve, which makes it an amusing deck to talk about if you are that sort of person.
Even then for Bozzzton here, this starting hand, it's not great, but it's not that bad. He's got a good amount of draw, which I guess is the main thing you were looking for. So, I mean, I say it's not that outstanding of a hand. What are you actually looking for in this matchup that really does all too much in the early game? Because make no mistake, this is a matchup that will be going on for a fair little while. That doesn't mean that it will necessarily or likely be a fatigue matchup, because there's a lot of power that enters the game once Sulfuras is equipped and the fireballs start attacking through to face. But it will be very slow, at least until around turn 9 or 10, when Jaina comes down, Sulfuras is equipped.
Yeah, weird stuff starts to happen around that turn, because at that point, the warrior kind of dumps its minions so that no more water elementals can be made. And so it makes it really hard for the mage to start fighting back. But you know, with Cindergoza, with Ged and those sort of cards, Alex Straz will be hiding in there somewhere as well. The mage these days has a little bit in the way of aggressive options to finish it off, but pretty difficult at that point.
Yeah, it is indeed. It's going to be down to the warrior if they can meter out their removal as effectively as possible, because like one of the favorite stories of the casters is the evolution of how this deck was played, not necessarily how it was built, because generally with decks, how refining works is it's the deck lists that are refined, but the playstyle stays generally pretty much the same.
Okay.
I think is usually the way it would work out. Like, does this card fit in the deck? Yes or no? Like, I don't know, Rin in Q-Block. It was always a random example off the top of my head. Or Umbra in Q-Block. Something like that, where you're not entirely sure. But with this deck, obviously with new expansions it's changed, but the core of the deck is still fairly similar, I would say. And it was really the shifting over to saving your removal until right at the late game, so that your fireballs can go face. They realized using fireballs from the Ragnaros hero power as removal is not that good, because these control decks have too strong late game win conditions. They are too powerful if they're given all the time in the world. So as the warrior, you want to be relatively aggressive and close out the game as quickly as possible with the die insect hero power. Yeah,
and you're using things like Brawl in those instances you described to clear the board and make sure you get a semi-guaranteed 8 damage twice, which means you save all your... It's just a really weird way of doing things. But the way you go about that is to make your board wide enough that your opponent can't be hitting you, and you just chip away. And those factors of 8 in health total are just so important. And basically you're buying flips.
Yes.
Like, how many flips can I get myself down to? You get it down to sort of having to win 2 flips, you probably win the game. If you have to win 5 flips, you probably lose the game. And all the way through the rest of the game, you're just buying yourself flips.
Yeah, and that is why some people would, I believe, give this Taunt Warrior the moniker of a relatively annoying deck, because, you know, you cannot control how the fireballs land in the later stages of the game, but what you can control is how much you're drawing in the mid stages, and Bozzzton is doing a fantastic job of that thus far, keeping up very nicely with the amount of taunts being played. So as soon as he finds something like, I don't know, maybe Phantom Militia, something like that, just to really ramp up the amount of taunts being played here, or a Stonehill Defender at least, you could be in a good spot to just be ramping up the amount of pressure, get closer to that Sulfuras activation. As we can see here from Pokrovac.
Yeah, he's got as much of a curve as this deck that doesn't have any early minions can possibly have.
Absolutely.
He's got sort of the 8, 9, and 9, which is about as good as he can hope for.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, right? We're talking in terms of curves starting at 7 or something.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's got it.
I mean, it's not absurd. Like, there have been series where I've seen Control Mage curve out and win games where it really shouldn't have done. Like, I believe Muzzy during Copa America Season 2, where he ended up winning the tournament, played a beautifully played game of Control Mage against The Quest Rogue, I think it was Nalgodan who was playing that as well. So it does have aggressive potential is basically the point I'm trying to make. It doesn't purely rely on the likes of water elementals from Frostlich Jaina, especially now that Sindragosa has made its way into a lot more deck lists, now that obviously Medivh has rotated out. And Dragoncaller Alana can also be a big swing in your favor.
Yeah, plenty to deal with. Like you say, it's going to be interesting, this game of chicken that's going to go on around the brawls. Obviously, Pokrovac is going to try and force Bozzzton to use one, and Bozzzton's just going to say, nope, I have 42 health. Make me brawl some other way.
And Pokrovac getting some pretty powerful plays. Lich King off the top kind of follows up with a good amount of pressure, obviously leading into Jaina. And like you said, if a brawl does come down here, there's only one in the hand at the moment. So Bozzzton would be unable to deal maybe necessarily with Dragoncaller Alana or 2 or 3 water elementals on the board. Or at the very least, once Sulfuras is equipped, it will be a little bit harder for him to get those fireballs through to face if there's a bunch of water elementals kind of clogging up the board.
Yeah, and there goes one of those brawls. So, kind of essential. Nice little raptors. Surviving.
Yeah, life truly does find a way.
Wow. Nice. Another point of damage done. It's part
48 more to go, yeah. And there it is, Phantom Militia, really one of the cornerstones that allows this deck to be so low curving, because I think one of the main things that's changed the way this deck works is in the Ungoro days when this deck was first becoming a thing in the Taunt Warrior, it had to play cards like Primordial Drake in the later game. You had the Curator as well, which kind of helped to speed up the draw.
Like you say, it had to curve.
But exactly, it was a curve deck. And this way, you know, you just play Stonehill and you pick Wax Elemental or Goldshire Footman. You just pick super low-cost cards, and you have loads of card draw in your deck. And it functions closer to the other super low-curve draw decks, like Miracle Rogue, closer than the other more curvy decks like Taunt Druid.
It still bothers me that people played this as an odd deck for a while.
I know how much that one bothers you.
It really upsets me. It's like, this hero power never survives. Why do you want to upgrade it to anything? Makes me very sad. But it makes me happy that it no longer happens that fantastic players like Bozzzton are choosing not to do that silly thing.
As Bozzzton, for the moment, like we mentioned, does not have that ability to clear off minions that much from hand. He could obviously play Scourge Lord Garrosh if he wanted to, but obviously the downside of that is he would lose the game because he wouldn't have the Ragnarok hero power, so I don't expect
The downside of this card I've put in my deck is that when I play it, I lose the Hearthstone game. Obviously, you don't have to play it.
Yeah, obviously.
Which is why you can play cards in Taunt Druid that produce beasts.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it was going to come out. You don't have to play.
I waited till round 3. I waited all the way to round 3. But yeah, you don't have to play cards in your deck. They can be situational. Especially
I mean, when you're
like
drawing this much, like Q-Block and Warriors with Acolytes of Pain, then you don't have to play every card. The curve decks and aggro decks, obviously you need every card to matter.
And Taunt Druid's a weird case because you do draw a lot of cards, but half of them are useless in any situation already. And you don't want too many useless cards in your deck.
But in this specific moment for Bozzzton, he is starting to be a little bit afraid, as Pokrovac, I think, is using Frostlich Jaina on curve in the way that I think was pretty underrated by the community right at the start. As people were thinking of it as, obviously, it's a super high-value card. No one can possibly deny that because you will end up with a bunch of water elementals by the end of the game. What they weren't thinking of it as is just the ability to really go like quite quickly in terms of pressure. You can really ramp up the amount of damage you're doing. And obviously, the main benefit being you just win against aggro when you play it and don't die.
So the owl there, not achieving a great deal.
Yeah, I mean,
other than getting
it's
pinged
something to make the board a bit smaller. Like at the moment, the thing for Pokrovac, or the thing for Bozzzton, is he cannot clear off. Like, there are more minions coming down from Pokrovac than Bozzzton can clear off with the hero power every turn, which is obviously fantastic for Bozzzton because that means he's chipping down the hero power. But there's two things that will start to work against that. It's that Pokrovac will run out of minions at some point, although looking at his hand, that might not be for quite a while.
He's got an ideal hand, but
okay, maybe that's less of a concern. The main concern is Bozzzton will draw removal. That will eventually happen. The second copy of Brawl will come. Warpath will get to the point where it clears off the board completely. Obviously, there's no Sleep with the Fishes anymore now with Gadgets and rotated out of Standard. But I feel like at some point, Bozzzton will be able to clear the board, and then it will come down to Pokrovac as to whether or not he's able to push forward enough of a board, or will the hero powers alone from Bozzzton be enough to clear things up?
Gonna start finding out. I mean, as it stands, I thought Bozzzton would get this, but as it stands, Pokrovac's hand plus that board are gonna be really difficult to clear up.
And that's the thing, is that all the while that Pokrovac is using his hero power to make a water elemental every turn, the hero powers are almost even, because obviously Bozzzton has the chance for it to go face, but even then the water elementals clear up. And if it clears one of them off, great, you've just gone hero power for hero power. And in that scenario, if the hero powers are equal and Pokrovac's hand is so much better, he's really quite far ahead in that scenario.
Yeah, no more armor gain available for Bozzzton apart from bits and pieces that might reside within the deck, but nothing to speak of. And Pokrovac just got to chip away. This Syndragosa could be huge, of course. 2 random legendaries is really weird, because 1 random legendary is not very good.
Right.
But if you get 2 goes at it, you're favoured to get 1 that's going to help you a lot.
Fair. As Pokrovac here, making a play in Phantom Militia, which is one that I find fairly interesting, because it feels to me to be a pretty big trump card in that it could be used to make a water elemental on the same turn, as well as load up on the board quite massively. But he's not even using it for full value.
I'm feeling, though, that if he plays it now, if he doesn't get brawled, he's in a decent spot. And if he does, he's got Alana waiting very soon.
Good point.
To get past that second brawl out of the way, then Alana just wins the game.
Okay, well, in that case, why not play the 3rd one
Understand.
as well?
I feel that he felt this was enough. But yeah, you want as much as possible, so it is interesting.
That's what I'm saying, is with this play, he has, I think, the sense that his opponent doesn't have Brawl, because if he would, it would have come down by now.
Right.
But if he's wrong, like you said, he's got the very, very strong backup of Dragon Caller Alana.
That's all right, you get 3 1/4s for 3. It's the same sort of thing, right?
Close enough.
Oh,
yeah, that's true, actually. That is just a much, much worse than Militia.
It's just the really
2 turtles and a monkey, yeah.
It's just the worst version ever.
But now here we see the situation that I was talking about, where Bozzzton has finally put up a situation where, because he's not playing any minions for the hero power to actually make any more water elementals for Frostlich Jaina, the board is finally clear, and it will be clear for, at least for the hero power to go through to face.
Yeah, and that's going to be only have to happen 4 times. Of course, there's going to be no more water elementals. There'll be more minions, but in terms of healing for Pokrovac, no, he may not get any more at any point. Although there's still Baron Geddon, which will heal at some point.
Yeah, there's Baron Geddon for heal. There's obviously Syndragosa Ping, which could make another water elemental. Even just Voodoo Doll Ping on this turn, obviously able to sneak in the Gluttonous Ooze as well. And if you go for Syndragosa on this turn, you're running into hand size issues, of course, which is why he's taking it a little bit slower. Because, again, any hero power he can draw away from his face just puts him pretty far in the lead. Because, obviously, when it comes to draw, Bozzzton will definitely be fatiguing first.
Yeah, this is the point of the game we knew was going to happen. Like, there's no way they could kill each other before you get to here. This is where the game of Hearthstone starts, really. The weapons have gone, the hero powers are leveling up. Yeah. There's X removal gone, which isn't that much for Bozzzton. He's still got enough left. And now it's all about where's that brawl and what are those legendaries.
Worth pointing out now that for Bozzzton, if he feels that he... Okay, so actually the card that he's got in hand in the Lich King card in Doom Pact, which we can see there, which obviously destroys all minions and burns card from your deck equal to those minions destroyed, that's a real trump card here available to him, because it can do 2 things. It can either be in the hyper late game, if Pokrovac overextends, it gives him 1 more board clear, or it's just a 100% lethal if Pokrovac ever gets down to 8 health or less, which is what I believe Bozzzton is working for here. He's realized I don't have to get in that last hero power by chance. The last one I can get in 100%.
Yeah, and you don't want to do it too early because there might be healing in the meantime, so you've got to save for a rainy day.
Ken Bloodhoof is a pretty good minion to get off the Frozen Champion as well.
Yeah, just something that's immune to being hit by the rag shots.
I mean, Ken has just beaten Warrior since the dawn of time. It's just such a nightmare for Warrior to deal with no transform effects. What are they going to do? Double execute it or double brawl it? Like, it just doesn't happen.
You don't look at all happy about this Ken from this side.
No, it's good. It's good.
So Pokrovac is still managing to develop scary enough boards. It's going to be really close as to whether Bozzzton get the necessary hits in.
And here, Bozzzton still keeping up, super aggressive with his line of play, and I think it is exactly that DreamHack that is allowing him to play like this, because he's now in a scenario with this 8 damage going through to face, that if there's no healing coming through from Pokrovac, Bozzzton will have lethal on the following turn. Pokrovac cannot develop on this turn.
Yep.
He has to heal, which has to be either Baron Geddon or Arcane Artificer, and thankfully for him, he realizes this is just too scary. Even if it wasn't for the Doom Pact in hand, giving your opponent the chance for the win is just not something you can do. Just
for a second, I saw Velen and I thought, yeah, Major Velen, that's really good. And I realized it doesn't do anything.
Not quite how it works. And setting up, obviously, for the ping on the following turn to make a Water Elemental, because I believe we've seen both Blood Razors now and even both Warpaths. Obviously, you wouldn't go for Warpath here, but it's setting up for a Water Elemental for that little bit of extra healing next turn.
Not much in the way of easy plays here for Bozzzton again.
I suppose, now that I look at it once again as well, obviously he can get his opponent back down to that crucial health total where he will just die on the following turn. He doesn't even necessarily need to get his opponent down to 8. He can get him down to 12 because he can go Hero Power and play the Scourge Lord Garrosh for 4 damage to face. So it's going to have to be big plays here from Pokrovac to even have a chance.
Yeah, and he's got to know exactly how much trouble he's in as well. He knows he's in trouble, but he doesn't know the extent of the trouble necessarily.
I mean, I think with that Lich King card that's been knocking about in hand for so long, at this point you would assume it's either Doom Pact or Obliterate. I think those are both...
The Army of the Dead.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, okay, yeah, so it's either a trump card or an unplayable card.
Or a dead
is
card,
what it is. Yeah, exactly.
Which, to be fair, now I think about it, is basically all of them.
So for Bozzzton here, he's clearly thinking, if my opponent is going to be... So he wants to make sure he can stick something on the board so that he can maybe clear off something like a Raven Familiar or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But then the downside is it's more minions healing up with Baron Geddon. But at the same time, actually, if it deals 2 damage, or if it heals for 2, it's dealing 2 damage on the following turn anyway. So it works out pretty much the same. May as well just play it out if you don't think you're going to get more value from it later on. And Bozzzton is clearly thinking super short term with his plays. He wants to win in the next 2 turns, or he's basically just giving up, I think.
Yeah, we're going to find out here. I mean, he should get it done in those next 2 turns. Pokrovac has been aware of this danger for a while. He could have been dead a couple of turns ago anyway.
Yeah.
I think he knows, like, just the way he's thumbing through the cards is like, he knows he's in trouble, but kind of going through the motions just in case, I think.
So healing back up to 14 here. Obviously, as I mentioned, if there is a 50-50 here for Bozzzton to just win.
It's always nice.
Yeah, with Scourge Lord Garrosh obviously being able to deal the last little bit of extra damage over the top.
Oh, he's going to find out.
For it.
Oh, well.
Bozzzton sadly missing that one. Still looking to be in a very good spot, though. I don't think that that's going to be the defining moment.
No.
I think it's just going to be the thing that would have ended it a turn earlier, which I like. I don't want to see the potential 50-50 to end the game, because on the following turn, Pokrovac has no healing in hand whatsoever.
Yeah. There's no way of getting anything back here. And again, he's seen the entire deck, so he knows what he's up against, apart from that one card, but he's got an idea, like you said earlier, that that's probably a trump card of some sort.
Now just has free reign to load up on the board as much as possible because, again, he's thinking short term. Against Control Mage, generally the adage was don't play minions if you have Gul'dan Hero Power or upgraded Warrior Hero Power for Fireballs because they can turn them into Water Elementals, which you don't want to happen. But here Bozzzton is thinking, now that the Baron Geddon has come down, this is just more damage. This allows me to clear the board 100% to lead to a game victory afterwards.
The Soccer World Cup's on at the moment. They could have taken the Moghashan Warden just as like a memory lane. It's been 4 years.
That was actually quite good.
It's been 4 long years. Right, back to the game of Hearthstone that Pokrovac is trying to not die in.
And he can obviously put himself in a position where he knows he's not dead on board by Meteor the Harrison, ping down the Phantom Militia as well. But we can see that would simply not be enough for him to survive. It will be Scourge Lord Garrosh to close out the game. In Bozzzton playing what I thought was a very nicely played series. Like I said, you want to be playing your removal very aggressively in the late game.
Yeah.
Against the aggressive decks, you can afford to be a little bit more greedy, I find.
And he balanced it well. Like the second brawl did come out earlier than he would have wanted.
Yeah.
But it did come out.
And still no possibility for Bozzzton to win 100% quite yet. He can start off with a hero power. Obviously, he could get his opponent down to 1, like, every time with attacking DreamHack hero power. But the downside is here, actually, if he misses, it's a very... Actually, the Water Elemental still dies, so it's still
there's no way for Pokrovac to get health. He needs to get a Water Elemental and something else on the same turn, and then get lucky as well. But this is why Bozzzton's taking so long to think about it, because...
He's thinking, can I lock this
out?
Like
Exactly.
100%.
I want to make sure that if I lose 5 50-50s in a row or something, I don't lose to something. Because if Pokrovac just gets that one turn where he can stick the cairn, for instance, so that it doesn't all get removed, because the cairn will actually come back to life, then win that 50-50, then drop a Lana, that's actually a win condition for Pokrovac. It's not an easy one. In fact, it's a mess.
And so now by playing the Stegodon here as well, it means that Sleepy Dragon on its own does not prevent lethal anymore, because it can be attack, execute, and hero power. But it looks instead like Pokrovac is going to be going for Dragon Caller Alana, which, as I mentioned, with DreamHack able to blow up the entire board, it is going to be lethal, available for Bozzzton, saving that trump card till right at the end, as I predicted at the start, would like to point out, to clear off one final board. Pokrovac thinking, well, what are you going to do in that scenario? And like I said, he was probably, I guess, hoping it was an Army of the Dead, as you pointed out. But after, I think, what was a pretty nicely played game on both sides there.
It seemed okay.
Yeah, like Pokrovac playing nice and aggressive, I thought was good at the start of the game. He was basically just trying to put in his opponent in a position where he couldn't clear off stuff for a couple of turns, or put his opponent in a position where hero powers go face and water elementals here up, because that's a big downside for your opponent if their hero power just does nothing.
Yeah, and like you say, he got into that exact spot, pulled it off. Bozzzton getting the work done. Both these players have played so... I talked through the stats, but I mean, it's hard to explain to you, come to the DreamHacks, these two guys are just always here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, forget the numbers. The numbers say these guys are always here and always fighting for top 16. But I believe they're 1-on-1 in this one.
Yes, they are. Bozzdton's teammate Mitsuhide having a little bit more success, and he's actually one of the players who opted to go with the Control Mage, which Bozzzton, while a teammate of Mitsuhide, has not decided to opt for, whereas Pokrovac has, and obviously did not do too well so far in that game. I believe the only mages that we've actually seen played on stream, it's now 0-1, because during the first series where we saw Mitsuhide played, the mage was banned.
Right, which is doing its job
exactly.
Right
It's basically one at that point anyway, because it's so good against your opponent's lineup, they thought he would get the win every time. But now for Pokrovac, he's taking another very kind of, okay, not very, but pretty slow, pretty control-ish deck. A lot of the time up against this Taunt Warrior, which is always a little bit scary.
How does the Warrior even try to win this game?
Really? I don't know. Like, you saw that.
Get the Militia and just get it going, right? Get Militia on 6 and make sure you get loads of other taunts as well. Then you can do it. Okay,
so there's a couple of things that maybe change what one would expect in this series, in that Pokrovac is both not playing Keleseth, he's going for the Wild Pyromancer version.
Okay.
So a little bit better against aggro than against control, I would say, in this scenario. And also, he's not playing Hemet in his deck, so his actual ability to get off Shuttle will take a lot longer to actually get going.
That changes things a lot. If he's not playing a quick version with Hemets,
exactly,
then the Taunt Warrior's got 10 or 11 turns, sure, then you get hit in the face for a lot of 8 points of stuff.
That is indeed correct. And for Bozzzton, he's off to a pretty good start, I would say. He's got a good amount of draw in the Acolyte of Pain, and then he can just play Taunt, Taunt, Taunt for the next few turns. But Pokrovac...
Yeah, looking at this hand, he's not... Who cares about Hemet? I'm just going to draw the things I need just to grumble away from having a great-looking hand.
And that's clearly his thinking, because if you're playing Wild Pyromancer and Acolyte of Pain, since the start of Hearthstone, that's been one of the most powerful draw engines that exists, outside of, like, Northshire Cleric and Circle of Healing.
Normally in Priest, right? But yeah.
Well, normally
as
Warrior.
In,
I suppose not, is Otherworld.
But now he has all of the pieces he needs to at least make an impact on the board when he gets to Shudderwock, and now it's about assembling those pieces so they actually have the maximum impact, not just some impact.
I mean, I said he wasn't playing Hemet, but he's got like every card.
No, he just doesn't need.
Is he actually like one card away? Is he just another Saronite Chain Gang away from just being the full combo. I mean, like the full relevant combo, I suppose I should say. Like, you don't really want to activate Hagatha in this scenario, I would say.
Mind control tech.
Exactly, MC tech. It's stuff like that. It's not the really important cards. And obviously no Keleseth in the deck as well.
No Keleseth.
As we see.
Because there's
the Wild Pyromancer card.
Even I understand that one.
And I suppose if there wasn't a opposing Acolyte of Pain there, something on that turn like Wild Pyromancer into Healing Rain actually looked pretty cool, just to draw an extra card and then heal up your Acolyte of Pain, keep the draw going. But you would obviously give your opponent a draw on their Acolyte as well. And draw for both decks in this scenario is very, very good. This feels very reminiscent of the Kazakus Priest mirrors, where the entire early game was denying draw from your opponent. It was never playing 2 minions when one of them was Loot Hoarder because they could Potion of Madness. It's stuff like that. And here, both players going really hard to maximize their draw and deny their opponent's draw.
Yeah, and obviously Pokrovac is in the great position where he knows that all he has to do is stop Bozzzton from drawing. Bozzzton doesn't know. Like, Bozzzton's stopping the draws from Pokrovac as well, which is correct, but in this situation, it doesn't really matter. If only he could see the hand, he would know that he was wasting his time. To some degree, obviously. It's always scale, but basically he's wasting his time.
As Pokrovac makes the play of going for Pyromancer before the Hex, which obviously clears off the 2-1 Chain Gang that was left behind. But I kind of question as to what the Chain Gang was actually doing on board there, because Pyromancer in his hand was really not that bad. Like, the combo of going for Acolyte of Pain into Pyromancer into Healing Rain, or I don't know, some other cheap spell, like another Zap that he has in the deck.
Maybe he wants his hand emptier than full.
Okay, that's a good point.
But he wants to make space for Shudderwocks for later.
That's a good point. It's probably that, I would say.
Because he's got so much stuff going on.
I mean, he's got it.
Dump it already.
He's got all the cards he wants.
Now he just needs space. So that'll be the reason.
I think that's actually a pretty good point.
We got one. Okay. Just pointing at Darrow.
That was meant to be an off-stream high five, Neil, as we congratulate ourselves.
We have to do it sometimes. Bozzzton here will be mighty suspicious himself about some of the turns of events he's witnessed in the last few turns anyway. He hasn't seen the same information we have, of course, with the Acolyte being in hand, but...
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of suspicious, but at the same time, I think I would actually make the read as Bozzzton. If my opponent is clearing out their hand of any cards that don't draw cards, he's probably got a hand that's full of card draw.
Yeah, he might have a Hagatha as well.
Exactly, yeah. He wants to get rid of the rubbish cards so that he can draw through to the good cards, whereas we can see Pokrovac has all the good cards.
And I mean, I'm trying not to get too tunneled into Pokrovac has won, but obviously he hasn't, because Bozzzton will have some time to start shooting some 8 shots. But honestly, when Shudderwalk does its thing, and it's going to do its thing, it's pretty unstoppable.
This is the well, it's usually pretty unstoppable is the addendum to put on that, because we have seen one Zola and one Saronite Chain Gang be played, and obviously I would imagine Grumble is going to come down soon. But if it works out in the perfect order, where Zola and Grumble activate before the Chain Gang, it will be the case that Pokrovac is unable to get back a Shudderwalk into his hand, which could be pretty scary indeed, which is why for Pokrovac, we will very possibly see him waiting back until he's found the other copy of Saronite Chain Gang, and he can go Chain Gang Grumble on the same turn to give himself the maximum amount of activations with Chain Gang, so that he has the highest chance, as I mentioned, of getting a Shudderwalk back to his hand for the full ridiculous ultimate combo.
And it shows how incredibly powerful this deck is when you're playing for a thing that only happens 80 to 90% of the time, and it's still capable of going significantly over 50-50.
Yeah.
Like, you're automatically just giving a few percent. Okay, you don't lose all of those games where it fails either, but you do against Warrior because it brawls all your Shudderwalks away and kills the last one.
However, for the moment for Bozzzton, while he doesn't have the ability to complete the quest quite yet, I believe, you know, Pokrovac's hand, outside of the combo, it's doing very little indeed. It's super reactive, and Bozzzton's kind of okay with that for the moment. He's happy to just keep drawing cards. As long as his opponent doesn't have the full Shudderwalk combo, he's looking to be in a good spot. Because from where Bozzzton's sat, maybe Shudderwalk's the last card. Maybe he has the ability to survive until the later stages, and there isn't enough healing to fight back against all the Ragnaros fireballs.
Yeah. I mean... yeah, I don't know whether to be optimistic or sad about that. I mean, yes, that works. No, it doesn't work often.
It does not work often. I will agree with you there.
But like you say, you've got to look for things. What's he looking for? What's he trying to achieve? And finding a way through. Quest not even done.
Yeah, and with no draw left in his hand as well, it's, you know, I was trying to paint the picture in which Bozzzton comes out on top, but it's looking pretty dire for him, I have to be honest.
I mean, Pokrovac needs to get a move on, is what you were saying as well.
Yes,
like, there's a situation here where Pokrovac just keeps sort of struggling to empty his hand, which is what he's been trying to do for a few turns. He keeps picking up card draw and Hagathas, neither of which he wants. Well, then this could take longer than he wants it to take.
Like, if he goes Grumble this turn, on the next turn, I think he wins 2 out of 3 times because there's like 3 relevant hero powers or 3 relevant battle cries, and the chain gang would have to be the last, specifically the last of them. I'm sure my maths is horrendously wrong, but something within that ballpark at the very least. But there's a chance that he doesn't. So I think he's saying in this scenario, I'm in a good enough spot here that I can wait for that chain gang, go chain gang into Grumble, and then go chain gang Shudderwock on the following turn, obviously with a 1-mana Saronite chain gang in his hand.
And he has the time to do that. I mean, the thing with his warrior deck, it doesn't surprise kill you.
Yes.
It's not like, hey, look at this thing that patrons are doing. It's just, hey, I'm going to hit you for 8 sometime.
It will not do more than like 10 in this scenario with hero power and weapon,
So he knows when it's coming, so he knows the maximum amount of time he can afford to just raise the odds of this thing doing its naughtiness. Obviously, with both life drinkers being played, there's no concern of dying. If you actually just get to the Shudderwock turn and it doesn't fail, you're going to win.
So 5 out of 7 activations available for Bozzzton. So he's just a Stonehill or a Phantom Militia away from completing the quest and getting this damage piling through.
Seeing the trouble the warrior has here, though, in this match, it's that it's not able to speed the Shudderwock up.
How so?
It's like it's not built for turbo completion of quest and start shooting you really quickly.
Yeah.
It's built to stay alive, play some taunts when it finds them, and then kill you after that at some point. It's not built for, hey, here's all my taunts. Like the old version, we should just go 3-drop into Shield Master, into 5-drop into whatever.
I mean, you had Curator to tie them all together so much more nicely.
Now it's either draw Militia or don't, and don't die until you draw Militia. Well, Shudderwock loves people who try not to die because it just kills you 1 turn or 2 turns.
Pokrovac finally going off here with the Grumble, which, you know, gives him a couple of activations with the Glacial Shard. So at the very least, his opponent's board will probably be completely frozen on the following turns, but there is the Phantom Militia. So now, if there ever was a Bozzzton to be taking this game from this point, this is the scenario that he would need to have for it to occur. Phantom Militia would need to come down, fill up the board, complete the quest so he can start getting some damage in. And also, actually, he would have to clear the Grumble off the board, because if he doesn't, he can grumble back his own Grumble with the Shudderwock battle cry and then play the 1-mana Grumble to bounce back his Shudderwock. So I think he realizes it has to die here, so he can't go for the quest completion. I think this is actually a really, really nice play.
Something else that amazed me, not just about these two, but about the regulars, how relaxed they look under all situations. Like, I know it's only round 3, but it's an intense pressure situation they're just like playing a bit of Hearthstone. Some things are going right, some things are going wrong. Yeah. Easy.
This I really like from Pokrovac, from Bozzzton, realizing that his main chance here is not what his deck can do, it's what his opponent's deck can do. He's just hoping that Shudderwock does not do the most disgusting thing it can do in obviously bouncing back another Shudderwock for infinite amount of value and life drinker hero powers to close out the game, which I think is pretty spot on, because he would have to get so incredibly lucky with the hero powers. The chance of all his hero powers going to face is definitely less than his opponent's Shudderwock messing up.
Although it's not relevant to this particular match, I would just want to highlight this Harrison. Again, like one of the talking points of the tournament is how many people have brought Harrison in Warrior.
Okay.
And it's mainly to combat the Malygos. It's really weird. All the Malygos players are crying that, how did you know? And it seems that some people just picked up this would be a Malygos meta, partly due to Hunter Ace last week, and thought for the sake of 1 card, you said it earlier about you can afford some tech cards in stuff like Warrior and stuff like Warlock, that for the sake of 1 card, they could just stick it in, and this is a big deal in the overall scheme of this tournament.
So Pokrovac with a complete board clear, obviously trying to maneuver a scenario in which I mean, I guess the main benefit of him playing Glacial Shard 3 times so far this game, because he obviously went Shard, Grumble, Shard, and now a second one, or a third one here. It means his opponent's board will very likely be completely frozen on the next turn. So even if he does go for a Shudderwock and it goes in the wrong order, everything will be frozen. So the ability to actually kill off the Shudderwocks may not necessarily be there. And then in the worst case scenario for Pokrovac, he still has 3 6/6s on board, which could just get the job done in their own right.
I mean, obviously the brawl is a big deal, but you're right. This is why the deck is constructed in this manner, to give you those extra percentage points after failures or to stop failures. And things like mind control tech, things like freezing your opponent's board are all ways to try and give yourself maximum chance of survival through various, I don't know, through thick and thin, depending exactly what happens.
And here for Pokrovac, obviously we can see Saronite Chain Gang was, I believe, the bottom card left in his deck, unless I've completely misremembered and he's already drawn it. But I don't think that the second copy has come down yet. He can't be that sad about that, because every single other one of his cards needed for the combo was in like the top 7 or 8 cards of his deck. Like,
it's weird though.
He's so quick.
He spent time trying to empty his hand, and then he didn't get the stuff he wanted, like the last piece, the second Chain Gang, and then he started dumping Manitize stuff to try and speed up again. He was willing to make a plan, stick to it for 4 or 5 turns, realise the situation had changed, and then change pace again. So
the thing to say there, I think, is he was thinking in the vast majority of cases, he wouldn't need that much card draw. He would just win anyway, which is why he threw out the Pyromancer without drawing cards with it. But then you need to say, if this happens, you do need to have a contingency plan. And, you know, if he's so far ahead, maybe he's allowed to make those plays where he draws as much as possible, because he just wins every time anyway.
Yeah, and looking at his reaction, like, he just sort of cocked his head on one side and gave a bit of a smirk. I think he's thinking the same as us, like, I did this, and then I didn't, then I did. One of those things was probably wrong at the time. I should have seen this situation maybe coming, but I actually don't think it was particularly wrong. I think he played some maths, the maths didn't like him, so he's playing some different maths now.
And I think this is still right, because, again, it still does look like the only real way he loses here is if his opponent, is if his Shudderwock messes up. So by waiting for that second copy of Saronite Chain Gang, what he's doing, as
there it is, as it's the last
final card. What he's doing is he's making sure that is as unlikely to happen as possible, because even if he's in fatigue, if it does happen, he will be healing up way too much for like 24 a turn or something absurd like that with the life drink.
And it just shows why he slowed down and sped up so much. Like, this is the bottom card. It showed that he needed to speed up just because, just counting 8s and 12s now, it's getting a bit close. So he had to just, maybe 2 cards he had to speed up at the end there. And for the rest of the game, he played slow, which he was perfectly entitled to do.
As I believe if this game continues in the way I'm expecting it to, I will never be more thankful to the Hearthstone community for putting up a fuss and getting the Shudderwock animation times changed than I will be here, because having to sit through
it'd be fun.
All that, no.
You never used to cast a lot when Yogg was around, not at least on this sort of broadcast. I've cast some Yoggs with you. It was great. We used to just sit there, have a bit of a chat and a picnic, read Twitch chat talking about the Yogg, generally sort of celebrate for a while, then come back at the end of the Yogg and
it was done.
It was like, oh, somebody won. Oh, it's the guy who played Yogg.
I mean, surprise. I remember in the first tournament of the Witchwood, when it was the Invitational one, like the Witchwood Invitational, I believe, Orange played Shudderwock, literally got up from his desk and left the room. Yeah, and came back afterwards.
What I really want to know, though, is when this Shudderwock is played, I want to know if chat, we don't talk to chat very often, but I want to know if they can count how many battle cries go on.
No.
You don't reckon they can?
No.
Never challenge chat, mate. Never challenge chat.
Here for Bozzzton, he knows that the next card to be played is probably Shudderwock. It's the only real card left that does much of anything. So he's just trying to load up the board as much as possible to the point where hopefully his opponent messes up with the Shudderwock and his damage will be able to follow through with a couple of hero powers to close out the game. But it looks to me that while Pokrovac does have some secondary options, double Lightning Storm, Healing Rain, you know, you don't want to overload on this turn, even though he does want to clear the board. So he's just letting rip with the Shudderwock, just hoping that one Chain Gang goes off before both Zola and Grumble activate.
Making his way. There's Zola. There, he gets the Chain Gang. That's why waiting was so important. I haven't lost count yet. So now he gets everything going. Like you say, he's going to gain lots of health. Bozzzton's just going to make sure that the second one is played. And the shaking on Bozzzton's screen tells us that he's conceded some time ago but we get the joy of watching Pokrovac go to 1 game apiece with all these battle cries.
Yeah, and you know, we've been discussing some of the minutiae that has been played in this game that could have maybe made it for a slightly quicker victory for Pokrovac, but I mean, like you said, it feels like this has been in the cards for the longest time in this series. There just wasn't the early enough quest activation for Bozzzton to be able to push through the damage, and in the earliest turns, maybe if he tried to maximize a little bit more heavily his own draw, he might have been able...
But Pokrovac could have responded by making his draw quicker. Yeah. Like, Pokrovac had it perfectly under control there. He drew at the speed he wanted to for the entire game. Yeah. Because he had that... I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not something miraculous. He had that early draw, which enabled him to just control the speed of the game.
But now for Pokrovac, getting a win on the table and getting rid of that Quest Warrior is very nice indeed, because that Quest Warrior could have been potentially a little bit scary for Pokrovac to deal with, because Token Druid up against Quest Warrior is, or basically any kind of control-ish warrior, I think is one of the worst matchups that there is in Hearthstone at the moment because of Warpath and the Scourge Lord Garrosh. Like, you just never stick a board. It just doesn't happen because they won't play any minions, really.
Yeah, you just have to do 3 damage, and Warpath does it in discrete intervals of 1, which means...
Makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, exactly. So that's really, really important win there for Pokrovac, and he's now going to be responding, or Bozzzton is going to be responding, rather, with his own Shudderwock Shaman. And well, this matchup can be a little bit of an interesting one, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally it's a race, right?
Yeah.
So at the heart of everything, you're trying to do your thing before they do theirs. But obviously the interactions that lead to that are going to be messy, because we've seen about hand size and stuff issues.
However, in the mid stages of the game, there's a couple things that could work in Bozzzton's favor, I believe. The first one being that he has got the Prince Keleseth, which could allow him to speed up his own kind of mid-game dominance, I suppose, because if you can hit Keleseth into Chain Gang or something, you're obviously very far ahead in pretty much any matchup.
And you keep your opponent overloaded a lot of the time that way as well, if they have to start reacting to stuff.
Right. Obviously, we can see the Keleseth on curve did not happen in this scenario, so things are a little bit more even once again. But the other thing I believe that's working in Bozzzton's favor is the Hemet Jungle Hunter in his deck, which Pokrovac does not have access to. Which could just mean if Bozzzton hits that on curve, he will be completing his own kind of Shudderwock quest, if you will.
Yeah, because the rest is fluff.
Exactly, it's all just fluff. It's removal, it doesn't matter. Like we saw in Pokrovac at the end of the last game, there was Lightning Storm, Healing Rain, all that stuff. Doesn't matter at all. You just want to be getting through to your combo cards.
Yeah, not having Hemet's going to be a big deal, I feel, here.
Yes, obviously if Bozzzton can find it, however, there's no guarantee that that will be the case. But for the moment, Bozzzton still has a pretty respectable amount of card draw with this Acolyte of Pain ready to come down in the next few turns. And even outside of that, he's just a Grumble and a Shudderwock away from having, once again, pretty much the full completed activation of Shudderwock.
Yeah, you don't want to get distracted by the fact that Pokrovac's hand's got a Shudderwock in it, because Bozzzton's hand's got all of the other bits and pieces. I think Pokrovac probably has more card draw in his deck. I might be wrong there.
He does, and he's utilizing it much better at the moment, because Bozzzton is obviously going much more all in on getting the most consistent and most powerful Shudderwock as possible. But Pokrovac is going all in on getting the quickest Shudderwock, because he's drawing very quickly. He realizes without Hemet in his deck, he has to draw quicker than his opponent or he won't win. And he is. He's drawing way quicker. The
whole concept of build a Shudderwock is just too amusing to me. It's like build a beast, but actually you pick the sleekness of your Shudderwock and the size and stuff that it does.
Svelte Shudderwock.
It just doesn't make sense. I love it. Live Shudderwock. Yeah, Shudderwocks are...
Oh.
Are they? Is that what they are?
Bozzzton picks up his Hemet off the top. That's what I'm whawing at. That is exactly what Bozzzton is looking for. And now with however many cards he's got left in his deck, like, drawing the big cards isn't necessarily that bad, because it destroys more of your deck when you do it, which is good. You want to be finding Grumble and Shudderwock as quick as you can now, because Pokrovac
he's found everything.
Incredibly close to doing it himself. He's now got another Chain Gang in play after playing the first one. Grumble ready to come down. We could even see Grumble on the Chain Gangs to play more Chain Gangs and lead to Shudderwock on curve.
Importantly as well, not importantly, but worthy of note at least, is Pokrovac's board is going to be hitting for 10 a turn, or 9, it's nearly 10, it's the same sort of thing. And so Bozzzton actually has to bother to deal with that board.
Right.
Which is irritating. He doesn't want to be wasting time dealing with this mess, because it's not really a mess that deserves the attention. But, you know, Pokrovac could just kill him in 2 or 3 turns without a Shudderwock at all if Bozzzton's not alert to it. And then if he volcanoes, he misses a turn effectively, which enables Pokrovac to get ahead. Sort of the opposite of what we expected when we were talking about Keleseth in Bozzzton's side. Well, he didn't get Keleseth.
One thing that I want to bring up as well, which I really like from Bozzzton, is he waited until he knew that he was either going to be playing or not playing Hemet on curve this game to play his card draw. Because obviously, if you can destroy your deck and then draw cards, that's so much better than drawing cards while you still have all the healing rains and lightning storms and all that nonsense in your deck. You want to be drawing cards after you're getting the real power combo cards. So from Bozzzton, saving the Acolyte of Pain and Farsight until that point is actually some pretty heads-up play.
Yeah, very interesting when you choose to draw cards. We saw it earlier, actually, with Stan Sivka as well, with Togwaggle. Like, cycling Wild Growth and keeping the mana
to draw from your
opponent's deck. So when you draw your cards is important, apart from, obviously, at the end of turn. We got you guys.
And like you said, Pokrovac just kind of turning up the damage here with the ability for Bozzzton to go for Hagatha on the following turn. There is the potential for a complete board clear anyway.
Actually turned the damage up to 11, in fact.
Oh, wow, very nice.
So...
yeah, this looks like, unless there's something much more appealing available to come down from Bozzzton, probably a Hagatha just to clear up the board. Still looking to be getting off the completion with Shudderwock in a very timely fashion. But for Pokrovac, he's looking like he might just get there first.
Well, I mean, he's just decided I'm going to try and kill you.
Yeah.
Seems like a really unique strategy, but oddly enough, sometimes hitting people until they die wins you the game.
Very, very easy grumble here. Obviously, Bozzzton will be forced to clear it off, lest he be faced with a 100% chance of Shudderwock coming back to hand.
This is almost playing like Doomsayers into Giants. He's like, you've got to kill this, you've got to kill this, you've got to kill this.
Oh, yeah,
Shudderwock.
it is kind of.
It's sort of each thing is buying him a turn closer that Bozzzton can't do his own thing.
Because it means that Bozzzton can't spend all his mana on going for something like double Life Drinker, which he'd obviously like to do, or going for Life Drinker into his own Grumble.
But actually, he's just to say, you know what, I'm going to ignore this. I want to do my Life Drinkery stuff, so I'm just going to ignore your 7/7.
No, he can go for
and now
one
he's
mana
thinking
hex.
about it, yeah.
1 mana Hex surely has to come down here, or at least the 4 mana Hex. Like, when do you ever get something better to Hex them?
He's going to have to.
Yeah. But now for Pokrovac with, I believe, both Chain Gangs, Zola, and the Grumble itself being played, he's getting rid of the frog from the board so he can't bounce back.
His hand.
He's got such a high chance here of getting back a Shudderwock to his hand. Grumble went first, though.
It did.
That, however, the Zola will activate, and it's a full 9 mana Shudderwock, which is obviously not as good as if the Grumble had gone last, but it's perfectly good enough.
Yeah, and it's just the same as the last few turns, if you like, except more so. He's got to clear this, has Bozzzton, so Pokrovac gets to go first again with his Shudderwock.
Bozzzton does now find his own Shudderwock there, but a Shudderwock on, what, turn 10, I think it came down, as opposed to turn 9. It's still way too quickly for you to fight back against. And unless Bozzzton starts playing his own Shudderwocks right now, he will just lose. Yeah,
and I don't think he can really play his own Shudderwocks right now, because he takes 18. Well, he doesn't, because things get frozen, etc. But Shudderwocks are silly. I like them.
It is worth pointing out now that for Pokrovac, going for the zap on his own frog there isn't necessarily working out that well for him, because it does mean on the following turn, if he did end up in this exact scenario where he only gets back a 9 mana Shudderwock, which is relatively unlikely to happen, he can't go for 9 mana Shudderwock into 1 mana Shudderwock. Like, he can only play 1 Shudderwock next turn because he's overloaded to 1 instead of going for 2.
I was wondering what you were talking about there, but yeah, overload. Overload's a thing that works. It's zap, not backstab, oddly enough.
Yeah, sorry, I should have...
you should have explained the rules of Hearthstone to your code cards. It's not something people are going to buy. All right, so Pokrovac setting up the lovely rainbow, followed by more life drinking, so his Shudderwock's going to be better, but this is going to give Bozzzton a chance to actually start Shudderwocking himself.
Yeah, with no Grumble having been played yet, though, I think he'll probably have to just slow down for a little bit. And obviously with the Volcano played, he can't go for it yet.
You know that's Grumble, the way he nods solemnly to himself in sadness.
Exactly what he wanted. And, you know, this is the same thing for his opponent now. For Pokrovac, this presents a pretty interesting problem, because if you do want to go in on the chance that your opponent will not bounce back a Shudderwock to their hand, you could forego your own Shudderwock on this turn and instead go for a Hex or Volcano on this turn. But that does obviously, once again, give your opponent the initiative to go for Shudderwocks, which is why I would imagine we're going to instead see from Pokrovac just the Shudderwock itself come down instead on this turn. Yeah.
Here we go.
It was
more Shudderwock action.
Kind of something to consider, but yeah, obviously.
You've got to look at everything like...
How could anything be stronger than this? Look at this ridiculousness. Yep, going for the next one again. Hopefully ending up this time with as many Shudderwocks in play as possible rather than in hand. Whereas it looks like he's going to be getting quite a few of them back to hand. As my God, he is missing Glacial Shard after Glacial Shard.
That Shard is just not doing what it's supposed to at all.
I mean, given how ridiculously powerful Shudderwock is when you play it in the late game, that was kind of about as bad as it could have been.
That feels like this... Like, if you said to someone, hey, look at this great new combo I've created, and show them that, they'd go, oh, well, I'm not playing your decks.
Because obviously the thing that's making this a lot slower for Pokrovac is he's only played 1 life drink.
Yeah.
So he's only dealing 3 damage a turn, or sorry, 3 damage per Shudderwock rather than the full 6. But then next turn he can just go life drink it into 1 mana Shudderwock.
DPS is damage per Shudderwock. Everything you've heard is wrong about other games. Yeah, and Bozzzton's DPS is much bigger at this point.
Yep, everything working in the right order for him.
Which is incredible. It never looked for 1 minute like he was going to get there, but hey. This is just silly.
Yep. This is just silly. And the fact that Pokrovac's Shudderwocks don't do Hagatha damage is actually kind of relevant here. I mean, does he just win anyway?
This is worse than fatigue
it's 6
damage.
It's 30. It's lethal anyway.
Good man.
It's lethal anyway on this turn, yeah.
It's like calculating fatigue damage using only an abacus in your toes.
Because if he plays Shudderwock, there'll always be at least 1 space.
Yeah.
Zola can only copy back Shudderwocks. Oh, no, wait, because it can copy back 9 mana ones. He's got no room in his hand for Shudderwocks anymore.
He has a life drinker, though. Is that going to be enough? It's not, right?
No, I don't think so. Because he can't play enough Shudderwocks. He would need to have played 3 more and then a life drinker for it to have a chance. And I don't know if that was a messing up from Pokrovac. I mean, it was the worst possible way it could have worked out. And he's still looking to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, because the Glacial Shards actually did their job this time.
No, wait, he's not. He just loses because there's enough damage from his opponent on this turn.
Okay.
As long as the frog doesn't mess him up.
Which it might well do.
Because both life drinkers have been played. That's 2 Shudderwocks guaranteed to come down on the next turn. I think Bozzzton just wins here.
I'm just staring at the screen, waiting to see what the health total does, I'm afraid.
What can happen. Yeah, because, wait, he hasn't... Oh, wait, he has played Zola, yeah.
Yeah.
Zola has come in, yeah.
And he has played 2 life drinkers for sure, so... These jaws...
That's looking like these jaws are going to claw and these bites are going to jaw.
Yeah.
All the way for Bozzzton to lead through to the victory. And Pokrovac was looking in a position where he couldn't really lose by getting the first Shudderwock, but purely because he bounced back the 9 mana one instead of the 1 mana card, which that is, I'm going to be perfectly honest, something I'm going to have to look back on to see if he could have played around that. But he loses because of it.
I like the way that there's like 27,000 Shudderwocks played. At the end of it all, Pokrovac gets out of 2 and just clicks bottom right, buddy. Yeah. I've seen enough Shudderwocks for 1 moment.
And I've got to be honest, I think Bozzzton was in the same boat as us, where he thought, I've lost. My opponent got down the first Shudderwock. On the next turn, he obviously just wins with all that crazy amount of damage. But Bozzzton somehow able to pull this one back.
9 mana one got copied. That's
that's literally it. There was not enough hand space for Pokrovac. And you know, throughout that game, he was drawing an absurd amount of cards. He had 2 copies of Manatide Totem in play for like 3 or 4 turns or something, and he was just burning cards willy-nilly.
And it's like what he did in the Warrior game where he dumped his hand to prevent those sort of accidents from happening, because so many weird things can happen. And it happens so quickly, you're sometimes not even sure how it's happened. I mean, you caught the 9 mana copy there.
Right.
That you do have to just empty that hand. That's why Loot Hoarder doesn't get played, though I'm still sure that eventually Loot Hoarder will be played. But you've seen these top players can't even solve the hand size problems without a Loot Hoarder. How on earth do you wedge one in there?
And so, I'm just trying to think, on the turn where Bozzzton played Grumble and Pokrovac could have hexed it, he only had a 9 mana card in hand, so he couldn't have guaranteed himself 100% lethal on the following turn because he wouldn't have had the mana. So going for Hex into just dump your hand of all the rubbish cards, I don't think would have provided him lethal. But no matter what.
I mean, I'm willing to say that there was a way Pokrovac could have won that game.
I
have no idea what it is, but I'm willing to say that it was close enough. There was probably something that if he had an hour to make each turn and see what was coming, he probably could have worked that out. There may be something obvious we missed, but I feel like he didn't do anything too obviously wrong.
I would agree with you there, as in this particular game, Pokrovac is lining up his druid, and thankfully for his sake, it is a token druid as opposed to a taunt druid, which puts him in a much better position to be able to just fight back in the mid-game, I'll say. And obviously the main thing is Hex doesn't completely destroy his game plan, because when you're playing Witching Hour and you've had a frog that's died on your side of the board, there's a very good chance that you will just have a frog resurrected instead of Hadronauts, at which point you probably just lose.
Totally different game, totally different pace of game as well. Like, Pokrovac seems a lot happier just playing this out now than the Shuttlewop thing. I mean, who's played Shuttlewop? Everybody. Who's played them at this level? Like, nobody.
As Pokrovac is in a position here where, you know, even though his Violet teacher is not looking to be running away with the game right at the start, which is obviously plan A when you get it off of the Oaken Summons, the fact that he's ramped so aggressively into a ultimate infestation, it means that he'll very likely be able to go for Whispering Woods into Soul of the Forest on the following turn after he plays the UI, at which point the actual counterplay for Bozzzton, if he wants to let rip with the Lightning Storm here, is significantly lower.
Yeah, I mean, nothing in hand. It's the mana that's going to do Bozzzton if he does lose this one, because he's so far behind on mana count. But you know, clearing up a board or two and hoping your opponent doesn't have UI seems like a really good plan right now.
Yeah.
Because the AoE is just enough to keep all this lot out of the way. And again, this is where the Hemmet comes in handy, because you can sort of get rid of these early boards with your removal, and if you get your Hemmet, say, okay, now I need to race, and Hemmet's so good for racing because you're guaranteed to draw your combo in 6 turns or 7 turns.
As Pokrovac clearly showing he thinks he is allowed to play this a little bit slower, a little bit more greedily, I suppose.
I think he has to.
I think that's. Oh,
because the Whispering Woods are going to be so good
yeah.
after the UI.
Yeah.
And the 3 Whispering Woods tokens would have just been not even a distraction.
Yeah.
The Jaws would have just bitten them.
He had Power of the Wild as well, so he could have powered them up to the point where they were 2/2s. But like you say, I definitely agree with the fact he can take it a little bit slower, because he's so far ahead on mana. Even if he can't do anything for 2 turns, his opponent still literally cannot play Shuttlewop because they'll only have 8 mana.
And 3 2/2s isn't really exerting pressure, it's just like a target more than a pressure.
Right.
It's like a kick me, that's half your job done if you can get rid of these Whispering Woods. You've got to make them really fight to deal with both sets of Whispering Woods, I feel. But now his hand is looking pretty juicy, and Bozzzton's going to have to find a way to sort this really quickly.
Yeah, as it looks like the players might be having some kind of audio issues, so we will refrain from talking about specific
as well. So, yeah, we're not going to
hand.
talk about specific things at this point, just in case they can hear us, but...
Yeah. But in this matchup in general, I feel like this is pretty standardly how it's going to be playing out, where, you know, the Druid has ramped up, they've played UI, and they're looking to just basically stick some kind of a board, while as the Shaman is going to be looking to try and draw their combo as quickly as possible, as we see has been happening from Bozzzton. You know, he was playing 2 Mana-Tide totems at the start, and he's going to be very aggressively drawing to potentially try and find that full combo with Shuttlewop later on.
Later on, if later on actually happens, there might not even be a later on looking at this. Whispering Woods is being played. And again, we're just not talking in specifics at this point, just in case the players can hear us right now. But you can see from the board that Pokrovac feels that he's in a really good position. Okay, we can talk about it again now, guys. Sorry for that weirdness, but we don't want the players to overhear us. So, obviously setting up the branching paths.
Yeah, and this is the situation where Bozzzton needs to think, do I ever win if I just go for clearing the board? Because obviously we can see he has the 1-2 punch of Lightning Storm into Volcano, or vice versa, which will be able to completely clear off this board and put him in a position where he's looking okay for the moment. But does that actually ever win him the game? That's 2 Lightning Storms out of the way, and 1 copy of Volcano out of the way as well, at which point Pokrovac will very likely be able to just stick a board at a later point, follow up, as you mentioned, with Power of the Wild, Savage Roar, Branching Paths, and just win the game in one fell swoop.
And Bozzzton, yeah, doesn't know where to put his... You can see that there's an issue here because he's just not sure where to point anything as the rope's going down. This looks like a mess.
Yeah, he's having to go for Lightning Storm into Volcano here. Or sorry, Volcano into Lightning Storm, just to make sure that he can clear off this board.
Plus
every
3
time.
to all of these minions. There's 7 of them. That's a lot, but yeah. Having to just overload so hard here.
Yeah, overload so hard and also use up pretty much all of his removal. The only thing that Pokrovac needs to be afraid of here is either second Volcano or Hagatha. And obviously with Pokrovac being, or sorry, with Bozzzton being overloaded for 4 mana on the following turn, Volcano is castable, it's worth saying, but I think Pokrovac can put himself in a position where he does not die to it, or his board does not die to it is the important thing. Like, Whispering Wood, Power of the Wild on this turn does not die to a Volcano because there's simply too much health on the board. Most of the stuff would die, or 7, oh no, it would only be at 14 health on the board then. So he is vulnerable to Lightning Storm, or vulnerable to Volcano no matter what he does, and he's making the gamble. The Volcano simply isn't there. Bozzzton pretty all in on having to find it off the top here. He could get it with Farsight or naturally from the top of his deck.
Yeah, I think based on that previous turn, which was such a mess, I feel that Pokrovac may have got the read that actually Bozzzton's not quite sure what's going on here. I think there's no Volcano. You can never be 100%, but in coupling with the fact it's a decent chance to take anyway, I think he felt, okay, I'm going to take the chance it's not there because that looked like a mess of a turn.
As Pokrovac, you know, like we said, if it does end up in the case that his opponent has the ability to clear the board, it's bad, but it's not the end of the world. You don't lose on the spot, whereas if they can't clear the board, you just win here. This is what, 5, 10 damage. You can buff them all up to 4 attack, which would be 4 times 5.
That's 20.
24, 25 damage on this turn, I believe.
Wow. Yeah, with the swipe and the hero punch as well.
Yeah.
Hero punch.
I like that a lot more.
Hero punch.
Hero punch. It sounds
That's what
like either,
Hunter has one of those.
Well, it sounds like just a really, really bad game.
Yeah, let's make it. It probably exists, and we're really sorry to the creators of Hero Punch right now.
So Pokrovac wondering, is it worth to go all in on this turn? Because now he's thinking, yes, my opponent obviously does not have Volcano, or they would have gone off with it on the previous turn, but do they have Hagatha? Because now there will be 9 mana available to his opponent with the overload.
Going the other way is, do I ever get this on this many minions ever again anyway? So let's just do it. And if they have Hagatha, well, I might still get it through with the Violet Teacher and the swipe.
2 draws for either Hagatha or Volcano off the top for Bozzzton, and it is of the utmost importance that he finds it right now, or he will be in no shape to win this game whatsoever.
Well, 1-on-1. 2 even. Now what?
Yeah, that's going to be...
Now what, Davok?
Yeah.
Come on, you're good at this game. Get us out of this.
Yeah, there's nothing that can really be done here. I mean, you can double Healing Rain up to, what, full health, pretty much. But he realizes that's not going to be leading him through to a victory. Pokrovac equalizes it 2 games apiece. I knew this series would be long, but I did not anticipate it would be quite this grueling for these players, having to perfectly sequence out these games. And I'm sure Pokrovac, even if, you know, we are not certain that he could have won the Shudderwock Shaman mirror,
he will be thinking
he will be thinking that,
right.
Exactly, which is, you know, for some of the less experienced players could be a massive hampering on their ability, but I would have to imagine, as you keep mentioning, Bozzzton and Pokrovac, very established DreamHack players, they're going to be used to making mistakes, basically, because you don't play this many games of Hearthstone without messing up a fair amount.
I was talking to a player who I knew was his first time, was really looking forward to coming here and stuff, who was 0-2 earlier, and I'm like, hey, keep playing it out. He's like, like I would be if I was 0-2, to be fair.
Right.
I'm like, look, you've got many more DreamHacks ahead of you.
And many more O2s ahead of you.
Get used to things not always going right, because nobody has ever won a DreamHack apart from Ike, I think, without something going wrong somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
So get used to things going wrong, get into the mindset of, hey, try and go 5-4, try and go 6-3, try and go 7-2, whatever your maximum score is, and settle down. That's not just me being a preachy old man, that's how these guys have done it. You know, I imagine that most of these players who we see and say are fantastic, some of their first DreamHacks are probably a bit of a mess.
As we are lining up for our final game of the series being
see you tomorrow, Davok.
Druid Mirror, which one of the most I don't know, talked about games of Hearthstone, arguably this year. Obviously, the most interesting game, I think a lot of players would argue, from the last DreamHack in Austin between Zalay and Amnesiac, was this Taunt Druid mirror. There's a lot of talk in Twitch chat, afterwards amongst the pros on Twitter as well.
Yeah, in the building, all the pros were disagreeing on every single play.
Exactly. It's a very hotly contested matchup because...
So we're going to tell you exactly how it should be played, play by play.
Well, the main thing, the core of the argument, I think, is spreading plague. That really is at the heart of the debate in this matchup, because you are... you have to go wide on the board to win this game in the traditional sense. Not necessarily if you're going full for fatigue, which is another argument, but at some point you have to go wide, which leaves you very open to spreading plague. And I think both of these players obviously will be realizing that, but Bozzzton here making a kind of interesting middle-of-the-road play where he's going fairly wide on the board. It is worth pointing out, but there's two reasons why I think this is somewhat more acceptable than what most players would usually consider, because his opponent is still a turn away from being able to play a Plague at all with the coin, as he does pick it up off the top. And even if Plague is being played, this is not a board of 1-1s or 2-2s. These are big minions. If the teachers stick around, you just trade in all the apprentice 1-1 tokens and keep generating more with the teachers.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason that spreading plague is so important, just if you haven't seen how this craziness unfolds before, is that 1-5s are basically the biggest minions in the deck.
Right.
So the more 1-5s you get from the plague, the better it is. They're just so much better than 1-1s. So one thing you can try and do, and the crux of it all, except it just doesn't really happen like this, is try to force your opponent to play their spreading plague. One way you can do that is maybe get your Malfurion down first. Get a couple of 1-5s, maybe buff them a little bit. Try and force your opponent to have to make some minions to respond.
Yeah.
If you can get a 3-minion board, maybe a Violet Teacher, 2 buffed tokens, something like that, try and force them to use a Plague.
I mean, I actually almost feel differently about forcing them to Plague. I feel like...
It never happens.
Well, that's what I mean, but the weaker your minions are, like basically if they're 1-1s, forcing it can be quite good, because then you can attack all of your 1-1 minions in, basically deliberately let them die, and then play your own Plague, hopefully with a Soul of the Forest or something afterwards, which is what we saw, like a lot of, I think that happened like right at the end of the Zalay Amnesiac game, which players were wondering, you know, that happened 3 turns into fatigue. Why didn't it happen 20 turns earlier?
Well, because they're making sure that the other one plays correctly, because... I mean, the silly version is if you use both your spreading plagues early, your opponent can then just whisper in woods their heart's content and win the game. That's the underpinning, unsaid thing that we probably haven't made totally clear.
Yeah, that's true. But then the other thing is if you play Plague early on, you very often just win, because your opponent can't
kill them with 1-5s that you buff out of sight.
Exactly. Especially with a hand like this, like Double Savage Roar is a very aggressive hand if you manage to stick that board. I mean, for Bozzzton here, we say he has left himself relatively vulnerable to Plague, which he has. This board is kind of weak to a spread.
But is he forcing a Plague? It's like, it's really... He's setting the question that we don't know the answer. I don't think he does. I don't think Pokrovac does. Is this board enough to coax out a Plague? And I think the answer is, if you don't Plague this, you're going to start taking more damage than you're comfortable with, because branching paths in hand would be so dangerous.
Exactly. You just don't know if they have it or not. And if he goes for Swipe here, he's literally making his opponent's board stronger. So in the end, deduces that he has to go for the spreading plague.
So who got the best of this? We have no idea, right?
I think it's Bozzzton.
I think Bozzzton too. I think he's forced a Plague out. But he now has to take substantial amount of losses to make sure he wipes out the Plague that he himself has coaxed out.
Well, so, what I want to say is with the style of play that Bozzzton is going for, this is... Well, the best scenario is his opponent has no Plague whatsoever.
Yes.
But in the second best scenario, where he has to deal with a Plague at some point, this is about as good as it could be, because he can keep generating 1-1s. He's got a Soul of the Forest in play. As soon as a buff card comes into effect, like Savage Roar, Power of Nature... Power of Nature. Oof.
There's so many of them, they're all the same.
Yeah, or Branching Paths, then he can buff his minions out of reach so they can clear off the Scarabs. But at the same time, should he even have gone with this line of play? His hand kind of forced it with a Teacher and an Oaken Summons in there. He kind of had to go a little bit wide on board. But we could have just seen nothing being done by him for the longest time.
Yeah, I think this is nice from him. Pokovac's hand is really weird. I'm just looking at that. Like, he's got so many buffs all ready to go.
Yeah.
But again, if he can't keep something on the board, And sorry, I'm just going to change course here. This is Bozzzton's, what he's playing for. It's like, if you've got the second plague, maybe I'm in trouble now. I'm going to play as if you've got precisely one, and like you say, no spreading plagues will be a bonus, but precisely one.
As now Pokrovac finally feeling comfortable to win back the board. And this is what Spreading Plague allows you to do. Your 1/5 Scarabs are so much better than 1/1s and 2/2s from your opponent. And now, although Bozzzton had, you know, pretty commanding board control for like 4 or 5 turns there, it just hasn't made enough of a difference, I think, in this scenario, which is why it comes back so constantly to, are you allowed to develop a big board in this scenario? Because, or in any scenario, sorry, I should say in this matchup, because Pokrovac has basically dealt with it with like 1 or 2 cards against all the cards that were used to ramp, make 1/1, stuff like that from his opponent, and the refill is not currently there for Bozzzton.
It's not, but he's a plague up.
He is a plague up.
So he has bought that.
Yep.
I mean, you can see the difference in the hands. Pokrovac has won it temporarily.
Yeah.
But as the game moves forward, Bozzzton could waste a Spreading Plague frivolously at some point.
Right.
Pokrovac it's like using your first weapon on your first attack with your eagle horn bow. You really don't want to do it,
right,
because the second one is now the game lost if you play it.
And for Bozzzton, though, I think the other benefit of this play of baiting out both a swipe and a Spreading Plague is he can go for plays like this, where he just goes wide on the board, hoping his opponent can't remove it, because, yeah, like, there's a good chance he won't be able to clear off this board, in which point, if he draws any buff card, he's in such a good spot.
That Wrath was really important, just for tidying anything up at all here.
However, you know, he is clearing off a lot of the board, and I suppose both players are playing a UI from pulling massively ahead. Obviously, we can see Pokrovac has 2 in hand, which will obviously make this hand a lot juicier, because for the moment, it wasn't really getting the job done because he was simply so afraid of dying.
And this has been Bozzzton's problem. You highlighted maybe 2 turns ago. It's the dying hand of Bozzzton has been pretty awkward. Don't want to draw cards with branching paths, but do you have to draw cards with branching paths here?
You really want to go attack. And, okay, so here for Bozzzton, if he goes for for Whispering Woods once again, you've got 5 minions on the board. Your opponent clearly does not have Plague or Swipe, or they would have played it.
Yeah.
And if they're leading into turn 10, they've just ramped, they want to play UI. Pretty desperately, I would say, actually. So if you can make a nice wide board here with...
it's so hard to know.
Woods.
If he plays it, it's genius, but it's so hard to know what he knows and what he doesn't from what he's put together. But he knows a lot about the hand. He knows that Pokrovac has been struggling, but I'm not sure that last board was swipe-worthy.
Really?
Wrath into hero power got rid of quite a lot, and then he had
Wrath into hero power.
But he might have Wrath into swipe if he had missed or whatever. So I don't think Bozzzton might have enough info because it's an all-in play. If he plays it and he's wrong, he loses.
That's the thing, isn't it? Is if he blinks,
he needs to be sort of 90% on this one.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably I think he's got it. I think he knows it. If we ask him, do you think your opponent has swipe? He'll say, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I don't think he has enough proof.
So UI able to come down here with the Arcane Tyrant. I think this is the punish for Bozzzton's line of play. If he expected this to happen, just going for wide on the board with the wide on the board with the Whispering Woods.
And now he has swipe, and now Bozzzton's got a good chance of knowing that.
Yeah.
Does have the
Soul of the
Forest play now.
But then his opponent probably has Spreading Plague as well.
He has 6 more cards or whatever than last turn when you tried.
Yeah. And it would have been a very last-ditch effort for Bozzzton, but I don't know, his style of play, it has said to me consistently he does not want to take this through to the hyper late game. Yeah, Pokrovac realizes that. Like, Pokrovac realizes that Bozzzton's best chance of winning is winning quickly, which is why he feels so comfortable playing the ultimate infestation.
Being behind in fatigue, which means I'm going to beat you because you haven't got enough to beat me.
Yeah.
So I don't care about fatigue.
Yeah. Or rather, it's I'm not going to lose to you in the immediate. And then in the later stages of the game, you will not have the response to my whiteboard.
Because Bozzzton's going to have to UI to even catch up here, so the cards drawn is irrelevant. Because if Bozzzton doesn't UI, Pokrovac wins. Not necessarily in one turn.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, actually.
Okay.
Because if Pokrovac, I don't want to say messes up, but plays too heavily into UI, into Spreading Plague, then he's in a pretty dire position. Which he thinks he has to go for here. And now all of a sudden, Bozzzton has Spreading Plague into Soul of the Forest. And if you were looking for an example into how playing into Spreading Plague can be detrimental in this matchup.
Yeah, ignore everything we said at the start of the match. This is the example you need.
But at the same time, like I mentioned, if you are going to be making yourself vulnerable to spreading plague, you want to do it when you have 1-1s, not 2-2s or anything better, because here Pokrovac can obviously go for a full trade in and then go for his own spreading plague. That's silly.
This is silly, damn it. Make it stop. We've had Shudderwock versus Shudderwock with don't know how many life drinks happened, but a few. And now we've just got plagues and wisps.
As it currently stands, though, with no Soul of the Forest, I believe, in Pokrovac's hand, if you keep it still for one blooming second, it looks like Bozzzton is going to be coming out ahead, at least in the super immediate on this board, if he can find a buff. Like, because Pokrovac has the ability to go for branching paths, double Savage Roar as well. Like, if these Scarabs just are having, like, a kind of standoff where neither is actually killing the other, Pokrovac will win, because he can buff them up to 5 attack. Or even 7 attack with double Savage Roar next turn.
That's a lot of attack.
It's a lot.
So Bozzzton must have a lot of outs here, though. At least to get decent damage done. I guess Savage Roar's not enough.
To do what, though?
To do nothing. You've just got to sit there. Yeah, you're right. That's certainly nothing useful. Pokemon's just making the use of the extra resources from the UI.
So for Bozzzton, he kind of has to be thinking in this scenario, he does nothing here because if he does anything, he's too vulnerable to swipe. Like if he attacks into, or I suppose actually he wouldn't attack evenly like straight down, he'd kill off specific Scarabs.
Yeah.
But even then he can only kill off one, like it doesn't...
Yeah, your opponent can't clear the board next turn. They can just clear your Scarabs and then leave all the 2/2s up, mostly.
Yeah.
So I think you just wait for that to happen and hope to draw Savage Draw and then kill all the things on the re-swing and play some more Wisps.
But I was going to say Bozzzton needs to hope that he can sacrifice his own Scarabs off on the following turn after Pokrovac attacks into them.
Yeah.
And then draw his own Spreading Plague off the top. But he's got Treants inside of these Scarabs that are going to be populating the board. So he wouldn't even be able to go for a full board of Spreading Plagues.
He can't make a decision. I think he's decided he's not making a decision, if that makes any sense.
So I think here, for Pokrovac, I almost feel like the play is attack each Scarab into the opposing Scarab directly on top of it.
Right.
So that they cannot repopulate the board with their own Spreading Plague. Because in Bozzzton's hand, he's got a bunch of cards he's not playing. One of them could very possibly be Spreading Plague. At which point, if the board state stays even until the following turn, you go swipe, double Savage Draw, and win the game.
You do. I'm with you.
I'm trying to think of the ways that that goes wrong. Obviously, Bozzzton could clear off more of the Scarabs on the following turn if he finds something like a swipe. But I think making sure that your opponent can't populate with their second copy of Spreading Plague is the one thing that Pokrovac really needs to make sure of here, as he does burn Malfurion the Pestilent, as he willingly burns a card with Nourish, which is a pretty massive deal usually in this matchup.
Yeah, the thing is, I think the game's gone almost beyond that now. I don't think Malfurion necessarily had the time to do enough impact to definitely win the game when you're that far behind in fatigue. So this is the play you were talking about, keeping the board as full as possible, and then just sitting there. And he wants to get that second, he wants to get that Soul of the Forest for himself, then he would just win the game. He would have won the game. I'm sure that's good English.
I mean, this is, to be honest, the play I think that I didn't want to see from Pokrovac, because now that I look at it, it's not only more vulnerable to Spreading Plague because he could trade off every one of these Treants and play Spreading Plague. It's more vulnerable to damage because it will be it will give Bozzzton the ability to, with the 2-attack buff, to clear off the entire board from Pokrovac.
Yeah, Pokrovac was looking for the Soul of the Forest, and when he whiffed, he just didn't know what to do at that point.
Yes, he was looking for the Soul of the Forest.
Like the second he didn't find it, it's like, wow, okay, now I'm a bit confused.
And obviously he can go super wide here with Whispering Woods or Violet Teacher stuff, anything he wants to knock about here. But he's still vulnerable to Plague, I think, is the main thing.
Yeah, he's not vulnerable to anything else, though, and he may be comfortable with that. Like, Whispering Woods is a joke, and everything else in the deck relies on having Whispering Woods or Spreading Plague.
So if his opponent does go for Spreading Plague,
there's still Savage Draw out here. It'd have to be Spreading Plague into Soul of the Forest, #2 of each. So it seems likely this is going to work out for Pokrovac.
I believe Bozzzton's played both Soul of the Forest, though, at this point.
Has he played both swipes? I don't think he has.
No.
I feel like he hasn't, so he can find those.
Yeah.
Oh, he's played both Souls, though, so okay. So this is safe for Pokrovac to do this.
Yeah. So it's spreading plague he's looking for.
And that's just worst case, which isn't a disaster, because double Savage Roar with a Violet Teacher backup is okay.
And we can see with Malfurion uncastable on this turn, it's looking like that's going to be it in Pokrovac's favor. Bozzzton's style of play of going for a medium-sized board right at the start, obviously not working out for him because Pokrovac had the swipe, he had the plague, he had both plagues and swipes in this game. And I don't know, I'll be asking the pro players afterwards what they thought of, you know, holding back a little bit and setting up for a swipe turn so you were less vulnerable to spreading plague. But even then, given Pokrovac had so many more cards in hand, he was still looking to be in a position where even if, in the worst case scenario, spreading plague came down, he'd still be coming out on top. Yeah,
I'm not completely certain that he couldn't have had a decent read that it wasn't there. There may have been some turns where he's cleared and had a chance to be plagued again. Because that Wisp has been there since the start.
Yeah.
Maybe he had the read that isn't a plague, so he's only taking a chance on one card and one top deck.
But that is going to be it. Double Savage Roar, I believe, able to deliver over 31 damage to Bozzzton. So he's going to be taking this game. Such a hotly contested matchup from both of these players. There were things that I think both players could have done to boost their chances a little bit, because for Pokrovac, for me, it felt like small things he could have improved on. For Bozzzton there, it was basically just, was his complete game plan wrong in that final matchup? Because right from playing Soul of the Forest with double Violet Teacher at the start, he'd set out his sights on trying to go for an early lethal. And halfway through that game, when he could have gone slightly more in by playing the second Soul of the Forest into an Ultimate Infestation turn, just to make sure he had the highest chance of delivering lethal with branching paths, I feel like he could have gone slightly more aggressive in the mid stages of the game. But even then, such an interesting matchup with two very difficult to play lineup.
I want to see whoever does the VOD review of their own match in that one and see exactly what went on, because I have no idea about if there was a mistake in that Shutterwalk game. And again, I think the Druid match was a bit more simple, a bit more easy to understand, but even then I want to know what each player thought was in each player's hand, because there's so much reading information that's important.
That was a bit of a long one that we had to go
just a bit of a long one.
Those are the series that you don't want to have every game in a Swiss tournament, or obviously we'd be here until next Tuesday. But every so often, it's really great to see those incredibly technical games of Hearthstone where both players have to be on their absolute top of their ability if they're going to be having a chance, especially when you're up against the likes of Pokrovac or Bozzzton, two of the best players we have.
Talking of two of the best players that we have, that's only half of round 3 under wraps. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back for Zigzo versus DreamHack, two of the highest win rate players in Europe over the last few years.